Our middleware is called in two different situations. First, it's called when you initially dispatch the message. For example, in Image Post Controller, the moment we call message bus arrow dispatch, all the middleware are called, regardless of whether or not the message will be handled async. And second, when the worker, bin console messenger consume, receives a message from the transport, it passes that message back into the bus and the middleware are called again. This is the trickiest thing about middleware, trying to figure out which situation you're currently in. Fortunately, Messenger adds stamps to the envelope along the way, and these tell us exactly what's going on. For example, when a message is received from a transport, Messenger adds a received stamp. So if envelope arrow last received stamp : class, then this message is currently being processed by the worker and was just received from a transport. Let's log that. This arrow logger arrow info with a special syntax, curly brace ID, received and handling curly brace class. Then pass context as the second argument. The context array is cool for two reasons. First, each log handler receives this and can do whatever it wants with it. Usually, the context is printed at the end of the log message. And second, if you use these little curly brace wildcards, the context values will get filled in automatically. If the message was not just received, say, this arrow logger arrow info, and start the same way, curly brace ID, handling or sending curly brace class. At this point, we know that the message was just dispatched, but we don't know whether or not it will be handled right now or sent to a transport. We'll improve that in a few minutes. But first, let's try it. Start the worker and tell it to read from the async transport. I think we had a few messages from earlier still in the queue. When that finishes, let's clear the screen. Let's also open up another tab and create the new log file, messenger.log, if it's not already there. Touch var log messenger.log. Then tail it so we can watch the messages. Tail-f var log messenger.log. Oh, cool. This already has a few lines from those old messages it just processed. Let's clear that so we have fresh screens to look at. Testing time. Move over and upload one new photo. Spin back to your terminal and yeah, both log messages are already there. Handling or sending, and then received and handling when the message was received from the transport, which was almost instant. We know these log entries are for the same message thanks to the unique ID at the beginning. But we can do better than just saying handling or sending. How? This stack arrow next arrow handle line is responsible for calling the next middleware, which will then call the next middleware and so on. Because our logging code is above this line, it means that our code is potentially being called before some other middleware do their work. In fact, our code is being executed before the core middleware that are responsible for handling or sending the message. So, how can we determine whether the message will be sent versus handled immediately before the message is actually sent or handled immediately? We can't. Check it out. Remove the return and instead say envelope equals stack arrow next arrow handle. Then move that line above our code and at the bottom, return envelope. If we did nothing else, the result would be pretty much the same. We would log the exact same messages, but technically, the log entries would happen after the message was sent or handled instead of before. But notice that when we call stack arrow next arrow handle to execute the rest of the middleware, we get back an envelope, which may contain new stamps. In fact, If the message was sent to a transport instead of being handled immediately, it will be marked with a sent stamp. Add else if, envelope arrow last, sent stamp : class, then we know that this message was sent, not handled. Use this arrow logger arrow info with our curly brace ID trick and sent curly brace class. Below, now we know that we're definitely handling sync. The top message, received and handling, is still true, but I'll change this to just say received. A message is always handled when it's received, so that was redundant. Okay, let's clear our log screen and restart the worker. Upload one photo, then move over and go to the log file. Yep, sent then received. If we had uploaded 5 photos, we could use the unique ID to identify each message individually. Hit enter a few more times. I want to see an even cooler example. Delete a photo and move back over. Remember, this dispatches 2 messages. The unique ID part makes it even more obvious what's going on. Delete photo file was sent to the transport, then delete image post was handled synchronously, then delete photo file was received and processed. Actually, what really happened was this. Delete image post was handled synchronously, and internally, it dispatched delete photo file, which was sent to the transport. The first 2 messages are a bit out of order because our logging code is always running after we execute the rest of the chain. So after delete image post was handled. We could improve that by moving the handling sync logging logic above the code that calls the rest of the middleware. Yeah, this stuff is super powerful, but can be a bit complex to navigate. This logging stuff is probably as confusing as it gets. Next, the worker handles each message in the order it was received. But that's not ideal. It's way more important for all add Ponka2 image messages to be handled before any delete photo file messages. Let's do that with priority transports.